Johnson from Loyalty360. Hope everyone's happy, safe, and well. Wanted to welcome you back to another edition of Loyalty Live. In this series, we speak with the leading agencies, technology partners, and consultants in customer, channel, and brand loyalty about the technology trends and best practices that impact a brand's ability to drive unique experiences, enhance engagement, and most importantly, impact customer loyalty. Loyalty Live allows for a deeper assessment of the state of customer loyalty, as Loyalty360, the agency, or sort of say the association for customer loyalty, surfaces a number of challenges brands are having regarding their customer loyalty efforts. So we can take these back to these wonderful technology consultants, agencies, and get their perspective on what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and how they may be helping their clients to address some of the challenges and opportunities that we are seeing. Today, we're going to be discussing some upcoming trends for customer loyalty in 2023. And we have the pleasure of having Tom Madden, who's the managing partner of Loyalty and CRM, and Bindu Gupta, who's the senior director of customer strategy, insights, and research from ICF Next. How are both of you today?
Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome to everybody.
Doing great. Thank you.
Good. As mentioned, we're going to be diving into some of the top trends for customer loyalty for 2023. One of the top trends that we saw in our state of customer loyalty research coming out of the Loyalty Expo last year is that a number of brands are focused on or interested in redoing their customer loyalty program, potentially adding functionality, in some way impacting in a positive way. What are you seeing with regard to program relaunches or updates, and what are your clients asking for or looking for from you?
Well, it's a great question, and it's very timely because there's a lot of this activity going on right now. I'd kind of put things into a couple different categories. One is some folks don't know what they want. They know they need something, and so they might even put together an RFI or an RFP based on what they think they may need. But really, in those instances, I think they're looking for more help and guidance in terms of how do we start to get to where we want to get to, and what does it entail. And I can go to that in a little bit of detail in a moment. But the second category I would say is that here we are really 3 years after the onset of COVID and the pandemic, and so much has changed in those 3 years. In this 3-year period, there has to be the equivalent of change of the last 15 to 18 years in the loyalty space. I've never seen anything change this much this fast. But if you have the benefit of being in the industry a long time, you see things over time. But this is the last 3 years is almost the equivalent of, let's say, 2005 to 2019 in size. And so in that case, clients are saying, "Hey, I have all this data. I don't know what to do with it, or I don't know how to do anything with it. I'm not totally sure where we want to go. Can you give us some insights, ideas of what's going on in the industry? What are our peers doing? Where should we be going? That's white space." So help us assess that, right? So that second group is really coming at the challenges in an inquisitive way and looking for partners like ICF Next to help them figure out where they should be setting their destination, and not only that, but how to get there. Whereas that former group, that first group I mentioned, we see a lot of RFPs where people are asking for everything. There might be hundreds of technical questions, for example, where they're not even sure they need a technical platform. Really, they may need some analytics and some models and some strategies that might do just fine with the technologies they have. They just don't know. And so we're seeing some RFPs that are really big that we know are going to come down in size once we're able to have those conversations and say, look, what are the core problems you're trying to solve, and what are the challenges you have in getting them solved? And we can be much more helpful in those ways. So there's a lot of activity. It's exciting. All the brands we talk with are really excited to do some new things, but mostly for the right reasons as well, right? It's not new just for the sake of shiny, but new because enough has changed in our member databases, our member bases.
Excellent. Good point. It's simply greater number of data sets, and being able to action them can be a great challenge. Bindu, I know another trend that we saw in our report was this idea of the sea of sameness. where many loyalty programs are perceived as being equal, and it's really hard for brands to differentiate their offering to make them unique, make them stand out, but also to, address the customer need. Is that something you're seeing as well? And if so, how can brands address this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not easy for brands to, stand out, right? There has to be some basic elements in the program which are going to be expected. The consumer wants that, right? So if you look at an airlines program or a hotel program, they're going to be miles, they're going to be points. So this is where brands need to, first of all, meet them where the customers are expecting, right? They need that, but also really assess where are those points where they can stand out. How can they make those relationships last longer, right? How can they make that emotional connection with their customer through experiences they're providing beyond the program, right? So at ICF, we always say loyalty is the outcome, right? So how can we create that outcome through holistic approach? And that's really where the key is. And it's not easy to do because it requires a lot of change organizationally to be more customer centric. And we're having a lot of conversations with our clients and potential clients who are really looking to figure out what can push the envelope, right? How can I keep this customer with me or acquire more customers? So really just working towards that, creating that emotional connection is going to be a really key strategy going forward. And I can see that for the next couple of years, that's going to be a main focus point as well.
I love what Bindu's saying there, because sometimes the word sameness comes up and it's seen as a bad thing. And to Bindu's point, like one brand may have a similar program structure to another, but completely handle the engagement experience in a different way, in a more effective way. In that case, sameness is awesome, right? But if you just have the same format as some other program and you're not doing anything with it, you're not doing anything unique with it, well, then sameness isn't a good thing. So that's a great point to do.
Okay, excellent. When you look at technologies, there's a number of new technologies brands are interested in. CDPs integrating with their customer loyalty, customer experience offerings, NFTs, potentially blockchain, partnership opportunities, communities. What are you seeing? Is there a new technology out there that you think has a great promise for 2023?
Yeah, I really like this question in the context of, say, how much changed from, say, 2005 to 2019 versus the last 3 years. There are some in the list that you just mentioned that I think are worthwhile for brands to be looking at and exploring and utilizing, and others I personally think might just be the shiny object at the moment. So if you go back, let's say 5 years, everybody was talking about data lakes, right? Data lakes where you got all this data, but it's not, you still got to do something to get access to it. And then the CDPs have certainly become very prominent right now. And I think for legitimate reasons, because it takes all that data from all the various sources and helps, it's actionable data. You can do something with it. So that was a needed bridge, I think, from where brands were moving from what they had prior to data lakes now to CDPs. That's going to stick around for quite a long time. In many cases, people's loyalty platforms have always served that role anyhow because of all the access to the transactional data and like. But when you get to like NFTs and things like that, for example, those are things that I could be wrong, and maybe I will be, but I think in 3 years we're not going to be talking about NFTs and loyalty. I think that seems to be, in the grand scheme of things, that seems closer to a shiny object, whereas like a CDP seems as a actual a baseline need for certainly for enterprise brands.
No, I think I agree with you wholeheartedly. There's a number of brands, members that discuss NFTs, want to know kind of what it is, but we've had a number of meetings with emerging technologies, and a brand will be doing something NFTs and the loyalty group doesn't even know. I think it's a very unique offering. I think with the challenges you're seeing in crypto and blockchain right now, it's going to impact that as well. It definitely seems to be, I agree with you, a very shiny object where the return and how to use it, especially across a wider swath of the loyalty audience, is going to be challenged, right? Maybe for the upper tier, people want something very unique or an NFT, but holistically throughout the program, I think it's going to be somewhat challenging to do that. But I guess we will see.
Yeah, I do think I think you're onto something there. You can't always throw the baby out with the bathwater, but so there's some segment of members who are interested in NFTs. I would just argue that it's important to identify the size of that segment and be sure you don't put any more resource or effort to the NFT, for example, then you're going to get any sort of return on from that segment. Because I would argue it's going to be a minuscule size of your overall member base that's interested. Therefore, it should receive a minuscule amount of your focus. There's other things where you're going to get bigger bang for your buck.
Okay.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Tom on that too. And we have seen this in action with a lot of brands where they have created NFTs for a short term, but it's not that it has long legs, right? So we have seen that in a very unique space, which is not really connected to loyalty programs either. So just they are still figuring it out. Like they also don't know what they can do with this technology. So it'll be very interesting to see how it evolves as we, go down the road.
Okay. So, Bindu, when you look at brands who may have an interest in new technology, integration can be a big challenge. We just had a call today with a couple of brands who are looking to do some partnership, and integration is a big piece, right? So, how can brands incorporate some of these new technologies into their offerings, especially those who may be on a budget, who may have to substantiate kind of ROI or investment? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. And, as we talked about, there are so many new technologies. And there's always a shiny object versus what you really should be investing in and, really drive your budget long, right? So essentially, I think every brand needs to assess individual situations and really figure out, what they have today, right? Identify what stack they have today. What is the goal for adding on more? Is it going to, lead to achieving that goal? So if it is about creating those one-to-one experiences or really understanding your customer in a more, contextual way, then yes, investment in that definitely makes sense. But you cannot always just have those big dollars, right? So as you said, when they're on a budget, have that crawl, walk, run roadmap, really understand what can I do today versus, in the midterm and in the long term. And that's where they really, it reels them back to the main objective and the goal for even thinking about these technologies. And as we talk about NFTs being shiny objects as of now, if they have a long-term plan, definitely makes sense to invest in it. But absolutely, we need to rein it in and understand, what is going to work for our customers and what is going to work for our business.
Absolutely. Tom, data management, data privacy, data security have been pretty much front and center with brands for a long time, but it's kind of fluid right now. I'm sure you're aware of some of the lawsuits in Europe over GDPR. Different states have new privacy regulations in place, and they're adding to them or changing them quite rapidly, and more states are bringing them on. How are you advising your clients on data management, data privacy? Are there any best practices or suggestions that brands should consider in their approach to privacy?
Yeah, I would say that one of the thoughts is to play to the lowest common denominator. What I mean by that is who's ever the most stringent in their practices at the moment, right? Whether it's California laws or GDPR or whatever the case may be, establish your standards towards that, because it's only going to continue to get This is going to continue to get stronger and stronger for the consumer over time. So the more you take this seriously, look out a little ways and try to figure out, are you going to the easiest and loosest rules? Or are you starting to establish your policies and efforts towards the stronger rules? I think the folks in the latter group are going to be more successful and less reactionary and less reactive in time by focusing on some of the stronger standards. Look, ultimately, consumers are getting smarter. They want control of their own data, and I think the brands that jump out ahead of that and enable that in a true and honest way first are going to be paid dividends for many years to come from those customers. Those who play games with it, or maybe less nefarious, they just don't pay that much attention to it. They're going to be paying. They're going to be playing catch up for many years.
Okay. I've been to your last question. There's a push and move towards real-time interactions for brands, but then again, challenging with regard to technology integration, making sure the tech stacks work well together. What advice do you give to brands who are considering this move or want to move to more of a real-time customer loyalty or customer experience interaction with their customers?
Yeah, I mean, real-time interactions are definitely in demand because you do want to create that in-the-moment experience with your customer. But I think there's a big discussion also to be had on how much can we push that, right? Do you really want to be in their face all the time? Or it's like you understand from your data, everything you have on your customer to really figure out, what is their level of comfort? How much communication do they need from you, right? Do you want a loyal customer who is, walking to your store to give them, a message in their geo fencing that, oh, you have an offer, right? They're already loyal to you. Does it make sense then? Versus really just understanding, what the limits are. So, I mean, it's absolutely the buzzword, right? You read one-to-one personalization and you want those real-time interactions, but assessing as per your customer data and as per your customer preferences is also very essential.
Okay, great.
So I will add to that, Mark, if I might, just real quick, because I think Bindu is speaking most importantly to the customer experience side of things. There's also the technology side of things. So, for example, we've got clients who come to us because their transactions would take, 3 days to maybe register on the members database. And we've got the real-time transaction from that perspective, right? Or if you check out of a hotel, you want to be able to, on your Uber to the airport, make sure you got your points. Here we are at this time of the year where it's the big turnover time of the year for tier statuses. There are still big programs out there that take a month to run through their databases and look, did Mark qualify for diamond status this year? And we don't have those problems. Ours are real time with the technology. So in the programs we manage, already your status for 2023. Frankly, you knew it the day you hit it in 2022. You didn't have to wait for any rollover process. So there's that other side of the equation on real time too. That's very important as part of the customer experience and to reduce call center costs and customer care costs.
Okay, great. Well, Tom, Bindu, pleasure speaking with you as always. Great to get a perspective from some of the leaders in the industry about the trends and impacts for 2023 pertaining to customer loyalty, and looking forward to circling back in a few months to see how these all come into fruition. But again, thank you very much for taking the time to share your insights with us today.
For sure. Thank you. It's going to be an exciting year for everybody in the industry. So I'm excited for all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone for listening. Make sure you join us back for another edition of Loyalty Live soon. Have a wonderful day and a great 2023.